Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, and thank you for listening, whether it's on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. We have another name in the Georgia Senate race to speak of. He announced his campaign on social media and via this video. Take a listen.
In trucking, you gotta deliver. I'm Mike Collins, and that's why we drove home Trump's big, beautiful bill. We killed woke DEI garbage and banned boys from playing girls' sports. When Biden's open border got Laken Riley tragically murdered by a criminal illegal alien in my district, I took matters into my own hands. I wrote the Laken Riley Act so we can deport criminal illegals wherever they are, making sure this never happens again.
Mike Collins. Mike, you were fantastic. He loves his state, and he took this very personally.
We need a senator who works for Georgia, not the California crazies or New York nut jobs. I don't know who John Ossoff really works for, but it sure as heck is in Georgia.
Mike Collins for Senate.
It's time to send a trucker to the U.S. Senate to steamroll the radical left, deliver on President Trump's America First agenda, and put the people of Georgia back in the driver's seat. I'm Mike Collins, and I approve this message.
A photo of him along with President Trump and J.D. Vance on the back of his 18-wheel truck. Mike Collins is full-throated MAGA and didn't mince words on that, doubled down, and the timing of it to me is what's super important here, because there has been some movement within the Georgia GOP. Here's the thing. There is no kingmaker in the Georgia GOP. I think Governor Brian Kemp thinks he has enough clout to sort of be that, to be the cat herder of sorts for that state party. And I think he couldn't be more wrong. I think his throwing his weight behind the potential run of Derek Dooley, the son of former University of Georgia football coach Vince Dooley. Derek also himself being a former college football coach, but for the University of Tennessee, and not a spectacular one, marginal at best. Nonetheless, Governor Brian Kemp throwing his weight behind Derek Dooley gives this sense that Kemp thinks he's got the clout to sort of navigate the Georgia GOP primary for U.S. Senate into a realm of mainstreamism. And Mike Collins and that ad and that sales pitch tells me that he's going for the lane that Marjorie Taylor Greene would have, could have, maybe have occupied if she had made the run herself. But obviously, if Mike Collins running, Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't need to. Mike Collins, for those who are unaware, is just as bombastic. His tweets are often irrational, rude, crude, crossing a line. You heard the language in the ad. The anti-DEI, woke, the New York and California liberal crazies, all the popular right-wing tropes, just littering that campaign ad, and will litter his campaign and has littered his social media acumen. To use Donald Trump lingo, he's a nasty man. He's not a good guy. He's not for all Georgians, as every politician who's running for a statewide office likes to say he's going to run for all. He's not running for all Georgians. He certainly would not represent me, and I obviously would not want him representing my home state the way he behaves, online or otherwise. Which makes me think maybe that's a consideration for Georgia Democrats. Do you weigh in on the GOP primary? When you have one candidate, do you say, I need to show up to this primary and I need to ensure that not Mike Collins is the GOP nominee just in case? I mean, we don't have ranked choice in this country. And unfortunately, that's about the only measure of ranked choice that you can get. You can say to yourself, obviously I'm going to vote for John Ossoff, but if John Ossoff isn't going to win, it can't be Mike Collins. Now, prior to Mike Collins making his announcement this morning, yesterday on Fox 5 WAGA TV's The Georgia Gang, that show tapes Friday morning, by the way, the panel discussed the potential entry of Governor Brian Kemp's choice, the former football coach, Derek Dooley. Lori Geary, the moderator, Theron Johnson, Martha Zoller, Phil Kent, And our friend Melita Easter's on the panel.
Martha, let's start with you this week. The AJC's Greg Bluestein reports that Governor Kemp is throwing his support possibly behind Derek Dooley.
Yes, that's what we're hearing everywhere, and I think that's what led to Insurance Commissioner King deciding to get out of the race and moving back to run for Insurance Commissioner. I think, we should hear from Derek Dooley in the next few days as far as when he's getting into the race. And I think Mike Collins, you're going to hear probably a little before that. I think imminently we will be hearing that also. I think that probably as it will shake out, Buddy Carter said he's not getting out. He's been doing the work. He is not getting out. He said to me, he's got all his chips in this race. So that's where he is on that. I suspect, when this shakes out, what we're going to see if there's three in the race, that Mike Collins is going to have an advantage initially because he's more well known. And I think people will underestimate how important his involvement in the Lake and Riley Act is and how well known he is around the state because of that. So he'll come in kind of in the first there. Then you're going to see Derek Dooley in there getting where people need to get to know him. They don't know that much about him. And then, of course, Buddy Carter has the challenge that all first district congressmen have in getting their name known around the state.
Good points. Theron, what do we know about Derek Dooley? He's a political outsider, no voting record. So, how does that factor into this race?
I mean, he's friends with the governor. And I think the question is, and let me not dilute. I mean, look, Derek Dooley and the governor go way back. I know his time in Athens, and he went on to be a great coach. Short-lived at Tennessee. But from what I'm hearing from folks I talked to is that he's going to have to prove how Republican is he, and also how Republican is his actual policy stances at a time where, to Martha's point, where Mike Collins is. He is a MAGA warrior 2.0, right? And he just probably didn't say it fast enough because Buddy Carter said that he's a MAGA warrior. Yeah. So now Mike Collins is going to have to figure out, how do I show I'm more of a warrior to the MAGA movement than anybody? But the question I have is this, Lori. If the governor, and we know that he met with John King and he met with Mike Collins, right? This is what's being reported. Mm-hmm. Told them that he was not going to support them in their races, and it's eluded and inferred that he's going to be with Derek Dooley. Question I have was that the governor doing that on his own, or has the governor had a conversation with President Trump? And how much aware is President Trump of this race, and how involved will he be? I just don't think that Governor Kemp would do something like that to that magnitude without at least the White House knowing about it. So for the governor to say, hey, look, this is going to be my guy, I'm not going to be with you all, I just think there had to be maybe some coordination, or at least a sort of a flag saying to the president, hey, this is where I'm going. So we'll have to wait and see what Trump does.
So Theron makes some really good points there, but I do not think in any way, shape, form, or fashion that Governor Kemp coordinated in any way, shape, form, or fashion with the White House on this. I mean, Derek Dooley is not the sort of candidate that Donald Trump would gravitate towards. Buddy Carter might be. Mike Collins would definitely be. I don't think Derek Dooley. In fact, there's already the machinations within right-wing media to draw some questions about Derek Dooley, and Theron actually alluded to that as well. This from the Washington Examiner's Samantha Jo Roth, writing, former University of Tennessee head football coach Derek Dooley didn't vote in multiple presidential elections, never donated to President Donald Trump, and declined to register as a Republican in several states, a record now drawing scrutiny as he eyes a Senate run in his swing state of Georgia. Though he has the backing of Governor Brian Kemp, Dooley has consistently opted not to support Trump at the ballot box or through financial contributions. I mean, the second Trump reads this article, that's it, right? He's throwing his eggs behind somebody other than Brian Kemp's horse here. Voter records show he didn't cast a ballot in any Texas election in 2016 while living and working there, and similarly sat out in New York elections in 2020, according to that state's Board of Elections. Oh, wait, he lived in New York? There you go, Mike Collins. A little more red meat for you in the primary season, buddy. New York crazies. Dooley declined to register as a Republican even as his wife did so in multiple states, according to public records. In 2005, he registered with no party affiliation in Florida, while his wife registered as a Republican. The same pattern occurred in 2020 when they registered in New York. Georgia, where Dooley now resides, does not require voters to declare a party affiliations, which again takes me back to what Democrats ought to consider. You've got your horse in the U.S. Senate race in 2026, but maybe it's important, Democratic voter, that you weigh in on the Georgia GOP primary. You've got two MAGA warriors, and Governor Brian Kemp has thrown his weight behind the yet-to-be-announced run of one Derek Dooley. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty to nitpick on a Derek Dooley Senate run. We already have a football coach representing a southern state in the U.S. Senate. And that would be former University of Auburn football coach, a mediocre one at that, in Senator Tommy Tuberville, who has, in his short duration in the Senate, managed to embarrass himself and his state's constituents a number of times. But there is no point in trying to lump both of them in together to try and form some sort of narrative about what these men are. Listen, if and when Derek Dooley is to become the nominee, and he faces John Ossoff in the general election, that's when we can start talking about policy positioning and this, that, and the other. This is a fascinating, to me, this is why Georgia politics has been so fun to watch for, I don't know, well, I'd say the last 8 to 10 years. Georgia has become that sort of swing state that not only do you see swings between left and right, but now you're seeing swings between right and hard right, or actually, do you call MAGA hard right because it's got such an independent streak in some realms that even those who call themselves legitimate conservative Republicans sometimes find themselves aghast at policy positions, statements, tweets, Truth Social posts, et cetera, and so on, that the Trump White House makes. And Derek Dooley, and it seems that Governor Brian Kemp, to a large degree, now feeling as if he can be independent of Donald Trump, since he's not running for the Senate seat himself. He's not running for re-election. He's term limited out as governor of the state after, by the way, winning re-election despite Donald Trump not liking him. It's just interesting to see as Governor Kemp tries to play the role of kingmaker in state politics here, at least for the Georgia GOP, what'll come of that. Again, it's my belief that Kemp believes he's more of a kingmaker than he actually is, but I also happen to think he may be doing moderates and even Democrats something of a favor here by presenting an alternative to MAGA in the Georgia GOP Senate primary in 2026. Just fascinating stuff. The politically Georgia writers at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution even dived in on this morning when they talked a little bit about how Kemp's been trying to maneuver the Senate field away from being confrontational, writing he desperately wanted to avoid another U.S. Senate race in Georgia that doubled as a proxy fight with President Donald Trump. But with Mike Collins' campaign launch this morning, that fear is fast becoming reality. On one side are Collins and Representative Buddy Carter, both pitching themselves as unapologetic MAGA warriors with the rock music and the trucker and the DEI, woke agenda, New York, California. I mean, just all the tropes. On the other is former college football coach Derek Dooley, a Kemp ally and political newcomer, who's expected to model his imminent campaign on the governor's playbook. Pro-Trump, but aimed squarely at a more mainstream GOP audience. A contentious primary isn't what Kemp envisioned when he asked donors to hold their fire and quietly huddled with Trump in hopes of uniting behind a single contender. That huddle didn't do that. There can be no coordinate. This cannot be coordinated. They write, he was determined to avoid the chaos of 2020 when the GOP infighting over Trump's favor helped drag Republicans to the party's extremes and ultimately cost them control of the Senate. And for a while, the strategy seemed to work. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, perhaps the most polarizing GOP figure in Georgia, was swiftly discouraged from entering the race after behind-the-scenes pressure, and Insurance Commissioner John King quit the race last week shortly after some Kemp arm twisting. But Dooley's promise of a fresh approach to the campaign, listen, I welcome a fresh approach from Republicans in campaign rhetoric. Really, I do. I think the American public would too. Let's give them that. Like a fresh approach, please, by all means. Can we get away from the rock music? Can we get away from the strutting around on the hillside in blue jeans and a button down with the family flank? Did Buddy? I'm sorry. I don't think I saw Mike Collins do that. His truck got a lot of time in that ad. I don't remember family being there. I'll have to go back and relook. Nonetheless, where was I going with that? Dooley's promise of a fresh approach to the campaign has divided activists and failed to clear the field. And some party heavyweights are wondering why Kemp isn't going with a better-known, battle-tested candidate. It is true. It's sort of a quirky thing. It's like, wait, who was talking about Derek Dooley in politics? There was a time when after Vince Dooley had retired from coaching at the University of Georgia that he considered running for office, and even his wife Barbara, who's still with us, she had flirted with the idea too, and I guess both of them. The window closed, and I mean, my gosh, it's been so long since Vince Dooley has been football coach at the University of Georgia. I just don't know how much clout the Dooley name has in the state anymore. Anyway, Collins in particular, they write, presents a unique challenge. He's a MAGA-aligned firebrand who checks many of the same boxes as Green, but he could defy efforts to paint him as a MTG with a mullet. I love that. His resume includes bills signed by both Trump and Democratic President Joe Biden. He's a culture. Okay, and let's put an asterisk behind that. The Lake and Riley Act, obviously, is he's a cultural brawler. Oh yes, with viral memes and red meat rhetoric, but also offers a pragmatic pitch to swing voters as a trucking executive who's weathered hard times. I don't know that that's really a moderate. There's a lot to overcome. Again, he's got a social media history that is a lot to overcome. Here's what else they write. He's already framed the race as a battle for Trump's agenda, practically daring Kemp's allies to try to stop him. And here's where I pitch in and say, aligning yourself with the Trump agenda, the one big beautiful, and like in a primary, I guess it's easier. The one big beautiful bill is slightly more popular amongst Republicans than it is amongst the mainstream. But be careful how much you align yourself with that bill, Republicans, because it's not popular. And I think as the implementation rolls out and the effects start to really weigh on the American citizen, I'm just saying, be careful. Maybe earlier is the smart play, but I think by the time we're voting on the 2026 general election cycle, that one big beautiful bill is not going to be very popular. Last line here from their piece on the Senate skirmish in the state of Georgia. When Kemp privately told Collins last week he wouldn't support him against Dooley, the second-term congressman responded that he looks forward to eventually winning the governor's endorsement when he's the nominee. Yeah, Democrats, let's huddle up here. If this is the field, y'all, then we know our guy. We don't need to vote in our primary. We need to vote in their primary. And I haven't dug in here to look at what sort of congressional primary. Maybe you've got more important things to vote for at the primary level, at the congressional or local level. But if you don't, I'm saying Democrats, this is your opportunity to sort of flex a little ranked choice here and try and diffuse MAGA. You've got two MAGA candidates. You've got one mainstream candidate who hasn't announced yet, but when he does, maybe that's the guy that you cross the line to vote for in the GOP primary. Back after this. It's The Ron Show. Email The Ron Show if you'd like, Ron at ronshowatl.com. You can also call or text the show, 404-919-2725. Back to the whole Senate campaign makeup on the right. Melita Easter's going back to the Georgia gang that aired yesterday on WAGA Fox 5 TV. She brought up a really interesting point, and I think in a tax strategy that Democrats need to adopt. Oh, God, even that word. Well, you'll hear what I'm talking about. Take a listen to this.
A college-level psychology course could have a lot of fun looking at the daddy issues surrounding this U.S. Senate race.
Yes.
You've got Derek Dooley, who was a mediocre football coach, going after a race, an office that his father did not seek, with the help from a governor who was like an adopted son to the Dooley family. You've got Mike Collins, who followed his father, the late Congressman Collins. And certainly his fundraising is assisted by those family connections. He's seeking an office his daddy lost in 2004. And then along the coast, you've got Buddy Carter. And you have Jim Kingston, the son of the former Congressman Jack Kingston, who raised $800,000 in just 3 weeks to run for that 1st District congressional race. So there's daddy stuff all up and down the ballot. And of course, we've got the other daddy's money issue in the governor's race.
Does it matter, daddy, how she puts it, Martha?
That just makes me really uncomfortable, Melita, putting it that way. But that's okay. I mean, I think it's in some interesting points.
Yes, I think she's right. No, Martha's right, too. Yes, it does have some interesting points. I mentioned that a little bit when we had the rollout of the gubernatorial campaign of one Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. And that's going to be a fracture point for the left to focus on if Burt Jones becomes the nominee, and I think he will. The fact that he comes from good money, and he comes from influence money. And there was also, remember the whole rural hospital situation where his dad owned some land over in a rural county, and that county is trying to rubber stamp a new hospital bill, and there's Burt Jones in the state Senate making sure that this all. There's a lot there. There's a lot of there, and I'm really just kind of flying off the cuff here, so I don't have the details right there in front of me. But I do remember us covering that story and kind of raising some questions as Georgia Democrats did as well in that legislative session. That said, the whole daddy thing, I think, is legitimate. It's something that Democrats really do need to focus on, because we had this period of time where it was Clintons and Bushes, and we're all like, oh, we don't want another Clinton or Bush around. Well, I mean, here we are in Georgia with this, the politics being a family business sort of thing. And if politicians aren't popular, then why would families who are full of politicians be popular when their familiar name winds up on the ballot? Back after this.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So, while I was up yesterday morning actually watching the Georgia, I haven't watched the Georgia gang in a while, and I don't know, I just, like a lot of y'all, I just kind of want to tune out from time to time, and I've taken, some chunks of time off this summer whenever I could see an opportunity to do so, to take a knee, to just kind of unpolitics my mind, believe it or not, and I do when I can. It's been exhausting to cover. Atlanta has had so much going on at the civic level. We're in the midst of, by the way, city council races and the mayoral campaign that just doesn't seem to be in opposition for a mayor who is ripe for opposition. Anyway, between the city and the state, of course, we've been a powder keg of purpleness for quite a while. And, of course, all that's gone on from the presidential and the post-presidential cycle. It's nice to take a break. And, I enjoy watching the Georgia gang because I know many of the people on the panel, and I enjoy the back and forth. And, of course, find myself, drawn to one side versus the other. Nonetheless, I haven't watched it as much as I have in the past. Yesterday, I got to sit down, and I was up early enough. I know what it was. We had a condo pool party the day before, and I had 3 or 4 bevies. They also served lunch, and the sun and dehydration. Anyway, I got back from that pool party, and I passed out early Saturday night, and then woke up at 9:45 in a panic. I had a mix show I had to get on the air for my audio station, so I had to get that on the air, and then it was just wired. Couldn't sleep. I woke up early enough on Saturday morning and had hydrated myself the night before, took some pain meds, and woke up feeling great. All right, let's take on the day. So I did, and was able to do some house cleaning and watch the Georgia gang. Here was another important story that they touched on that the Wall Street Journal brought to light last week that focuses on Atlanta's growth.
For the first time in decades, Atlanta's growth is slowing. Now, according to a Wall Street Journal article, census data shows more people moved out of Metro Atlanta than in from mid-2023 to mid-2024. Now, that's a first in at least 30 years. Rising housing costs, traffic, weak hiring, and high office vacancies are pushing people towards smaller, cheaper cities, signaling a big shift for one of the South's long-time growth magnets.
Here's where I put on my residential realtor hat. That's what I am, a residential realtor. Feel free to hit me up, rononthereal.com. Here's where I put on my residential realtor hat and tell you, I've talked a lot from a political and from a real estate realm about what we're headed towards in the city and metro area. Unsustainability. This is not sustainable. This sort of growth is not sustainable, and the people are telling us that with their pocketbooks. Now, listen, understand that Atlanta isn't shrinking. People aren't moving away. Fewer people are moving here. The growth is slowing, but it's still growing. Does that make sense? This isn't like some mass exodus, but I will tell you, this is, to me, the canary in the coal mine. This is the warning sign that I think developers need to heed. I think civic leaders need to heed. Mayor Andre Dickens needs to heed. Incidentally, he's not just the mayor of Atlanta. He also chairs the Atlanta Regional Commission. That is the official planning agency for the 11-county Atlanta region. He called himself the transit mayor when he ran for office, and he's been anything but while being the mayor of Atlanta, and now chair of the Atlanta Regional Commission. This is unsustainable. And by the way, you heard Lori Geary, the host of the Georgia Gang, speak about office vacancies and housing costs. Okay, those were, I think, the first and third things she mentioned. Well, those two could sort of correlate, right? I mean, the housing issue, we don't have enough supply. The demand is high, although even in Atlanta, the housing industry is in a bit of a slump. But also the fact that there's high office vacancies. It's really hard, by the way. I read an article about this. This is like fascinating, wonky, nerdy stuff. It's really hard, by the way, to take an office building, especially like a tall tower office building, and retrofit it into housing. It takes a lot. First of all, and if you don't know this, you're like me. You're like, oh, I didn't know this. It isn't so much about the frame of the building or the physical dent. It's about the electrical and the plumbing. Really, the plumbing, when you think about it. If you build, say you've got a 10-story office tower. Let's just go with 10 stories because that's a nice round number. If you got a 10-story office tower and you have plumbing for offices on all 10 stories, all right? How many offices do you go to have, or like if you go to an office building, how many of those office floors have bathtubs or showers on them? Any? Many? None? None. None is usually the answer. Right? Now, multiply that by all 10 floors. And think about it. Usually in an office building, or a building the size of an office building, a floor could house, I don't know, we'll go with 10 units. Okay? Like, this is a big office. Like 10 units, minimum. You could probably do more than that. But you need at least 10 tubs or showers now. At least. And in some cases, a lot of people like, 2-bed units. You want the second bathroom, or at least the powder room, right? The powder room is probably not a hard ask, but when you think about 10 to 15 tubs or showers on one floor, the plumbing is the problem. And because you're talking about a stoutly built office tower, you're talking about concrete. And so then you're thinking, well, how are we going to pull this off? We're going to have to drill holes. We're going to have to compromise the concrete structuring. This suddenly becomes dangerous stuff, right? To even put in exposed piping. And, who doesn't love exposed plumbing over their head or along the walls going down, thinking, well, what is that oozing down that pipe that could somehow wind up in my living space? Yeah, this is not an easy thing. Okay, I didn't really want to get into a geeky conversation about converting office buildings into residences, but it's not as simple as, oh, well, that empty tower right there, we'll just put people in it. Okay, but where are they going to bathe? That's a legitimate problem. So I should find this article because it was so wonky, but so eye-opening about the difficulties in converting an office tower into livability. And it's happening. Don't get me wrong. This sort of stuff is happening. It just takes a lot. How many of you have gone to like a loft building where you can tell this used to be like a factory of some sort and they've turned it into livability, and you see all the work that goes into turning it into something livable? It's a gargantuan effort. For an office tower, it's really hard. Anyway, the middle part is the part that I want to focus on because I do it all the time. It's the traffic problem. We keep one-leaning ourselves into an hysteria. And I have made the argument many times that time spent in traffic is a tax on the commuter. It is time that you're not getting paid. I mean, who gets paid for sitting in traffic? Does anybody other than, folks like in our state patrol? Nobody gets paid to sit in traffic unless you're driving a truck, hauling stuff around, or you work in law enforcement. So that is a tax. That is your personal time being taken from you. And a commute in Atlanta, I mean, we joke you're always an hour away from Atlanta, no matter where you are in Atlanta. There could be another part of Atlanta you're trying to get to that you're at least an hour away from. But yeah, the average commute in Atlanta it's a lot of time. And that's great, or it used to be great for like broadcast radio. Not so much anymore because broadcast radio will give you a 7 to 10 minute commercial break twice or 3 times in that commute, and you've maybe heard 2 songs, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why I launched Audio Gay TL. We are very light on commercials. We'll go no more than 3 minutes, no more, period, in an hour, not in a commercial break, like in an hour. Anyway, didn't mean to pitch for that, but hey, check that out if you get the chance to. We're also, dealing with a lack of mass transit options in this state. I was talking to, I went on a really, really awful, I want to say first date, but it was an only date, an initial date, where I talked a lot to this fellow who lived in New York for 14 years about the lack of mass transit, because he had asked me a little bit about like the whole real estate thing and like, oh, should I live in Marietta? And I'm like, well, is mobility important to you? Yeah. Do you have a car? No. Are you going to buy a car? I don't know. If you're going to live in Marietta or Cobb, you better buy a car. You'd better, and that's the way it is in most of Atlanta. You'd better buy a car. I have this one potential buyer who I'm looking for homes for, who has insisted that I find something that is walkable to MARTA Rail. It's not easy. It's not easy. Not in that price point and not with the sort of amenities and niceties that this buyer wants. It's not easy. And that has a lot to do with MARTA's limited reach. And MARTA's limited reach has a lot to do with MARTA's limited funding. Remember, MARTA gets not a dollar of state funds. Yeah, we're putting ourselves in a situation, Metro Atlanta, where, it's going to be hard to continue growing. And we may finally get to that point where the growth not only slows, but we start to see a decline because we're not dealing with housing in a I think a befitting manner. We're sprawling ourselves to death. That's the other thing. Whereas Metro Atlanta may be seeing some shrinkage, the ex-urban areas, the just outside Metro Atlantas that are going to become part of Metro Atlanta, they're actually growing and growing exponentially, but they're also contributing to the traffic problem, It just continues to exacerbate itself. And until, I don't know, an entity like the Atlanta Regional Commission or someone who is, the chair of that commission who is also in a lofty position to deal with mass transit in his or her own jurisdiction, like Atlanta, where they, could embrace Beltline Rail, but don't, until we really see a mindset that embraces transit expansion, this is going to continue to be a problem. And by the way, this is, I think, an opening for gubernatorial hopefuls. In fact, I'm going to touch on that. We'll do that when the Ron Show returns on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Final segment of today's Ron Show. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate that. Talking a little bit about Atlanta's mass transit problem and how I think this becomes a statewide issue. The talk from the Wall Street Journal is that Metro Atlanta growth is slowing, and folks are looking elsewhere to towns, cities like Chattanooga, Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, perhaps even Athens, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, Augusta, Macon, Savannah, Greenville, South Carolina. I would think might benefit from proximity, but not necessarily being in Atlanta. And I have done this before, and I will do this again because this is how much I believe in this. This is a gubernatorial campaign issue that I've yet to hear one gubernatorial candidate speak to. And by the way, I will be having, it's either a sit down or a Zoom, I want to say, like a full 30-minute thing with State Senator Jason Estevez here pretty soon. I'm gonna give this to him. First of all, he's my guy. Right now, unless somebody else jumps in that I'm unaware of, jumps in, that's the guy for me. And by the way, I've reached out to Keisha Lance Bottom's campaign folks as well. She's welcome to change my mind. She's welcome on the show. No, I think Atlanta's slowing growth is something to be concerned about. And whereas I think the right might go, well, that's a good thing. We need the blue bubble to stop growing. This isn't about blue voters versus red voters, okay? Because it's not like Metro Atlanta's a monolith anyway. Metro Atlanta is the economic engine of the state. And I'm not saying it's not good to see other parts of the state grow. I think actually it is good to see other parts of the state grow. But I also think we're in the 21st century, for God's sakes. Why are we still using late 19th, early 20th century modes of transportation to get us to and from when we have better options available to us? Oddly enough, by the way, here in Atlanta, as Mayor Andre Dickens has kicked the can down the road on Beltline Rail expansion, and by that, just in-city mass transit in general, he's building or seeks to have MARTA build 4 new infill stations. And that's a good thing Because one of the problems with MARTA is MARTA only goes to so many places, and it needs to go to other places that people are going now. There needs to be that sort of flexibility. Laying streetcar rail is not nearly as hard as it is to do hardline subway rail. And unfortunately, the mayor has kicked the can down the road on Beltline Rail, where it's most needed right now. And the further we kick that down the road, the harder it'll be to actually get it there, and at any point anyway. Nonetheless, they're doing a refit of Juniper Street here in downtown Atlanta, and they're pulling up old streetcar rail to make way for bike paths and planter boxes that sort of separate the bike path and the vehicle traffic. I'm not against bike paths. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against them at all. I ride my bike around the city a lot, as a matter of fact, and so I'm looking forward to that as well. I don't know that a lot of people would bike up and down Juniper, but okay. I think actually having the Beltline and then putting the Beltline Rail there would actually help with folks who like to take their bikes on the Beltline. And of course, there's a network of green paths and parks, et cetera, and so on. But yeah, they're pulling up streetcar rail, old streetcar rail from back when Atlanta had an extensive streetcar network back in the day before, white flight. Interestingly enough, right? But I go back to Atlanta's transit problem and traffic problem being a gubernatorial campaign position. It's one that I think that, somebody needs to think big about. And I've been saying for a long time, Democrats haven't thought big about big projects in quite a while because, of course, they come with big price tags. But you know what? The Georgia GOT always comes with big-ass price tags, and there's never any scrutiny for them. Why is that? I happen to think it's time for the Georgia Department of Transportation to have a mass transit department, like a subunit, a wing. It needs to look at this, and it needs to work in coordination. This makes no sense if it doesn't. It needs to work in coordination with Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport and tied to MARTA. Actually, if you just get to the airport, you're tied to MARTA. I mean, a quick little transfer, no big deal. Now, I've said for a while that, Florida actually has something along the lines coming together. It's called Brightline. Here's the problem. Brightline is a public-private partnership. There are profit motives involved. And Brightline is, in its early years, not seeing profits enough to where investors want to sidle up. This is where when you bring profit into anything that, to me, I believe should be public good and government functioned, you're asking for problems. Like serving the public need shouldn't come with a profit and loss statement. I just don't. It's why I have a problem with the existences of the Georgia powers, like these profit-driven entities that are providing power to businesses and individuals. I just don't think that should be something people profit from. I don't think that there should be hefty billion or $1 million salaries for CEOs that head these. I just don't. I think those are public utilities. They need to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't make a profit. I'm just saying that I don't think that should be the motive. And Brightline is seeing some problems with folks who are investing, which means that the state will have to step up and do it, which is something the state should be doing anyway. Like it's good to lighten the traffic on the interstate networks, right? On the state highway networks. It's something that Georgia needs to look at too. And being the state with the world's busiest airport in a city that is starting to experience some slowing of growth and folks who are living further from the city but needing to be near the city, I mean, is it not more obvious than ever that we need a mass transit network that connects the entire state? Hello? Why am I the only one saying this? Why do I not hear someone running for a statewide office talking about this? The Georgia Department of Transportation, in conjunction with the United States Department of Transportation, needs to start talking about a network, a rail network that connects Augusta to Athens and Atlanta through Gwinnett. Who wouldn't benefit from that if you're commuting to Gwinnett, right? Why drive when you can catch the, whatever you're going to call it, the G train? And we'll just call it the G train. Folks who are moving to Chattanooga but still like or need to be proximate to Atlanta. Oh, how about a train that comes all the way down alongside 75 even and stops in Kennesaw and Marietta into Atlanta? Oh my gosh, you don't have to be a Kennesaw State student and live in Kennesaw? Score! I mean, Kennesaw is lovely. I'm not saying that you shouldn't live in Kennesaw. It's a nice town. I'm just saying you don't have to. That's a housing budget thing that, now mom and dad don't have to deal with. Look at all the money we're saving. Getting to the airport from Macon wouldn't result in having to sit in I-75. Or more lanes on I-75. Or those pay lanes on I-75. With their cost overruns, by the way. It's really hard to get to Columbus. You've got to take an interstate and then get off the interstate, take a little spur to get. Why are we not connecting Columbus to Atlanta, to the airport? It'd be easy if you connect Macon to the airport than to connect Savannah to Macon. Look at that. Now you're getting folks from Savannah and Statesboro into and out of Atlanta super fast. And I'm not saying that you could have a student going to Georgia Southern who lives, say in Clayton County, Georgia, but you might be a student who lives in Macon who would attend Georgia Southern University with a short train. I mean, I don't understand why this isn't a campaign issue. And notice that, I started having this conversation about Metro Atlanta growth, and we don't want Metro Atlanta not to keep growing, right? But one of the reasons why this is so important is, we're seeing evidence that, whereas Atlanta is the economic engine of the state, I mean, a lot of the growth and development in, Fayette counties, I think, because of the film industry. Well, it takes a long time to get to Fayetteville from downtown Atlanta. But a lot of people who work in Fayetteville live in Atlanta and vice versa. And if we had, just this idea, if you're connecting, rail from the Atlanta airport through Fayette County down to Columbus, look what you're doing. You're taking vehicles off the streets. You're not having to spend so much money on highways and highway maintenances and adding lanes and those awful looking sound barriers. And why are they so awful looking, by the way? They look like Tetris. It's terrible. It's an eyesore. We have a beautiful state, and we're sitting here covering it up with concrete blocks and walls that are jagged and unseemly. Yeah, I want to hear this conversation about keeping Atlanta growing, making Atlanta a sustainable place to live, not just city but metro. People who live in Fayetteville, they travel the world and they're like, I'm from Atlanta. Okay, then Atlanta needs to be an affordable and sustainable place to live. And Georgia does too. And I think it's really important for anyone, please, to bring up mass transit as Project 2050. I mean, in 25 years, this can't all be, maybe it can be completed. I think this needs to be something that's discussed now. By 2050, we connect the state. And not worry about the profit or loss like they are down at Brightline with their public-private partnership. This is about what makes the state better. And guess what? The Georgia Department of Transportation operates not at a profit either. We never have the same comparisons about mass transit and, MARTA with its troubles and its ridership problems. Ridership has been slumping on MARTA, a lot of it having to do with the fact that, MARTA just doesn't stop at places that is necessary. And, of course, the pandemic really stunted the growth. But when there's a World Cup or a Taylor Swift concert or Beyonce, people love MARTA. Oh, my God, how convenient it is. Because it does go to major venues. And if we had a state rail network that brought folks to the Atlanta airport that could then use MARTA to get to those venues or to their jobs in other places, and then had the Beltline Rail or an Atlanta streetcar network that actually helped them get to more nimble places, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, Metro Atlanta is a great place to live. The state of Georgia is a fantastic place to live. Somebody needs to have that vision. Why am I the one that has it? Nobody else. That's going to do it for today's Ron Show. We are 9 a.m., 5 p.m. weekdays on America One Radio, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. Show notes as always at RonShowATL.com. See you guys tomorrow. Take care.